What's good? It's your boy Fanon. Welcome back to the channel. All right, I'm going to talk about Canelo Alvarez and the deal that he signed that he's supposed to have signed with Dazn. It's still at this point a report, but $365 million over 5 years and 11 fights. That is roughly $33 million a fight, and I do believe that it's guaranteed. Guaranteed $33 million a fight. Now, I'm going to talk about that, and I'm also going to talk about the PBC, and I'm going to talk about a few fighters that just recently signed deals, and what this says about the potential earning power of some other fighters. Now, before I do that, I want to thank you for tuning into the channel. Thank you, subscribers, for subscribing and supporting the channel. It is much, much appreciated. Thank you for watching the videos. I know I put commercials in the videos, and sometimes that can get on, people, of course you want to listen to the video and, not have any interruptions, but I appreciate your patience and understanding, because that's how we raise money for the cause that the channel is established to support. And thank you to everybody that comes to the live streams, supports the live streams through the super chats and also Venmo and Patreon. Thank you very much. Now, here's my thing. Canelo Alvarez is just signed a $33 million a fight deal, which is roughly what Canelo Alvarez is making per fight on pay-per-view, but DAZN guaranteed it. If it's guaranteed, this would be the case. Now, like we said, this is a report coming out from Dan Rayfield. So basically what DAZN would have done was they're guaranteeing the money that they anticipate the pay-per-view would have been, right? So $33 million a fight. Hey man, that is a lot of money. And it's a smart move for DAZN. I can't imagine that within the Mexican American community that won't motivate a lot of them to sign up for the app, because now what they were having to pay $140 for, they can now get for, what is that, $120, right? But they pay for it every month. So but then they get extra fights. So that seems like that would be a that would be a good increase in value for the people that know that they're going to buy Canelo Alvarez, where they know they're going to buy Canelo Alvarez fights. So I think that is a case of DAZN making a good offer for people's money. I wouldn't argue with that. I wouldn't argue against that at all. When I was talking about somebody had asked me, I talked about a live stream about, where I thought he would sign. My first inkling was, I was like, common sense would tell me Showtime, because they've got a pay-per-view model. And ESPN and DAZN they're not doing pay-per-view right now. So unless they either have a pay-per-view or they're willing to pay him $30 million a fight, I would think that the only way that he could go was someone with a pay-per-view mechanism. And that turned out to be the case. DAZN wind up giving him the money that he was making in the pay-per-view. It's, simple, straightforward stuff. You could see that. Now, I wasn't saying that I knew that DAZN would do that, right? But hey, man, if they're willing to do $1 billion and they ain't getting anything out of what they have right now, and they're serious about it, hey, man, they threw a solid chunk of money out there at it, right? Now, where's that money going to come from in their budget? I think that's going to affect, that might, I'm not going to say I'm going to, because I don't know the guys, that might affect the level of fights that you're getting, and might explain why we're getting Canelo Alvarez versus Spike O'Sullivan. Or not Spike O'Sullivan, Rocky Fielding, right? And, so, it is what it is, man. I think that's a smart move for Canelo, because Canelo gets guaranteed money. He ain't got to worry about, doesn't really have to worry about whether the pay-per-view is going to do well or not do well and all that stuff, right? He still might get, and he might still get, a good chunk of the gate if they're depending on how they're going to do the, how they're going to split up the gate. Right now, this is going to be in New York, so Canelo's leaving Los Angeles. This fight's going to be in there, so he might wind up fighting more in New York. That might actually affect the ticket sales, because Canelo, they used to say, you ran out of, and this is what Bob Arum said, it ain't my quote. It's like you run out of Mexico when you run out of Mexicans when you get to the east side once you get to the Mississippi, right? So we'll see how that does. But I mean, he'll still sell out arenas, man. It's Canelo. His name is extremely well established. And hey, man, I wouldn't mind seeing a Canelo fight at the Garden or at or the Barclays Center, wherever they show it. So, that's a good deal. But I do now, in saying that, man, I wanted this for people because I know you're going to inevitably have these guys, the AJ type fan cats, not the ones that know boxing, but the ones that somehow, think that Eddie Hearn owns DAZN. Is going to talk about, this great victory for Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn is not Golden Boy Promotions. And if they do a co-promotional thing and they have, what they're going to wind up doing is, at least as I see it, is they're going to wind up having Canelo Alvarez beating up a bunch of, C-level Matchroom Boxing fighters, because if you have an actual heavy duty, I mean, there's only a certain number of, top welterweights anyway. I mean, middleweights anyway. You got the Charlos, you got Demetrius Andrade, you got Billy Joe Saunders, Gennady Golovkin, and Sergey Deverenchenko. And then, of course, you're going to have some middleweights moving up or whatever, that might, that are obviously going to want to fight Canelo Alvarez fights. But if those aren't on pay-per-view and they're not going to get a percentage of the pay-per-view, I'm not sure exactly how much more money they're going to get. Because if you do a pay-per-view and you're going to get a percentage cut of the pay-per-view, then you can make a lot more money. But if you're not on pay-per-view and you're just fighting a guy that's got a heck of a lot, bigger paycheck than you do guaranteed, I'm not sure if that's going to really translate into those guys making a lot more money. And the reason that they would want to chase down and fight Canelo Alvarez isn't just for the sake of fighting Canelo Alvarez. It's going to be for the sake of earning a lot more money. So we'll see. But then again, like I said, I don't know what the agreement is. And, we just are just going off the report that Dan Rayfield had. But now I want to talk about, something that Terrence Crawford said. I was probably going to do an individual video on this. And this applies to Terrence Crawford, applies to every Errol Spence. It could be to Sean Porter, Keith Thurman, all these guys who really are within the black boxing community that will not, for one reason or another, face each other and figure out exactly and let the public see who the best boxer is so that that demographic of boxing fan can get full-fledged behind them. Because if you look at the difference between the paychecks that Errol Spence Jr. is getting and Terrence Crawford is getting guaranteed. Terrence Crawford's guaranteed is probably the better comparison because they're both guaranteed, right? I'm not looking at it because I like Errol Spence more than I like Terrence Crawford, or, I got some beef with Terrence Crawford. All I'm saying is that Terrence Crawford's money is guaranteed. 3 fights a year for a certain number of years. He's getting $3.56 million a fight, right? I guarantee you that because he's with ESPN and because he's not beaten Errol Spence Jr. and beaten Sean Porter and beaten Keith Thurman, that he won't get $33 million a fight. Guaranteed. And that is where like there might be a cap now on Canelo Alvarez, but that cap that he has now is a $33 million, is a set guarantee of $33 million. If I understand the contract to be what it is, like I said, I haven't seen it. So you're looking at $33 million. That is per fight more than, for Terrence Crawford, is 10 times what Terrence Crawford is getting. And it is 10 times, probably 10 times more than Errol Spence is getting. It is over twice as much as what was rumored to be the case for Anthony Joshua, because Anthony Joshua has $100 million deal that I think covers 6 fights. If his $100 million fight is 2 times a year for 3 years for 2 fights each, and I think that's what it is. But if it's anything different than that, then it's $100 million over more years. But I'm thinking it's 3 years. That's $16 million a fight. Canelo Alvarez is doing slightly more than twice that. And why is that? The reason that Anthony Joshua is making the money that he's making is because he's galvanized the fan base in the UK, right? That's his fan base. His fan base is heavyweight fight fans or fight fans in the UK, whether they're yuppies, bluppies, people who are interested in it, whatever the subscribers to Sky Sports, he's solidified that. And that's why he's getting $16 million a fight. Canelo Alvarez has solidified the Mexican-American fan base to the extent that they're willing to watch him fight. Now, some people, I understand might be wanting to see him lose, just like in the UK, there's people who want to see Anthony Joshua lose, but they're coming to watch his fights, and he is capitalizing upon that market. Right now, in the black community in boxing, the only person that has capitalized that is the guy that is making $200 million a fight, which is Floyd Mayweather Jr. And the only way that Terrence Crawford, and it's clear who these people are that can do this. It's Terrence Crawford, it's Errol Spence Jr., it's Deontay Wilder, it may be the Charlo brothers, because the Charlo brothers got Canelo there. If they can knock off Canelo and get that shot, Jamal Charlo can get that shot and get people behind him, it can happen for him too. But it's more than likely only going to happen for one person. But if the people don't fight each other, then they're not going to get that opportunity to happen, for that to happen, where they are going to be able to command the type of guaranteed money that Canelo has. And think about this. Canelo Alvarez, we're like, wow, this is $33 million. $33 million a fight, $365 million over 5 years, right? I don't think that puts him, what does that put him? Somewhere around, I'm not sure what. That's, somewhere around maybe after the endorsements, all that come into play for the NBA players. I don't know, maybe the 10th highest paid guy in the NBA. I think Anthony Joshua will probably be somewhere around the money that's getting made per year by like Paul Millsap and Blake Griffin. But when the same fan base for Blake Griffin and LeBron James and Stephen Curry and those type of guys, once all that fan base is familiar with a boxer and they support them, that's when you wind up getting and you match them up with another demographic who has somebody else who's locked up another fan base. That's when you start seeing the type of paydays that Floyd Mayweather Jr. commands. And we're not going to see it, we're not going to see that until that happens. And the only way that can happen is if these guys fight each other. The one person that I believe is in the best position to do this is Deontay Wilder. Because Deontay Wilder, if he does, first of all, Canelo Alvarez leaving the pay-per-view market helps Deontay Wilder. Because now there's more money for people to pay. There's going to be pay-per-view boxing events. And the question is, who's going to be the next pay-per-view star? Well, the only pay-per-view star in the United States that there was just left pay-per-view. So and HBO, Showtime is kicking off their pay-per-view, So we'll see who fills in that gap, man. But I have a suspicion that because Deontay Wilder is the guy that is really pushing to fight the best fighters, that it's going to be Deontay Wilder. And if Deontay Wilder knocks out Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder continue to go the way that he's going, I would not be surprised at all if eventually, he's the guy that's making Floyd Mayweather Jr. type of money. Because these $33 million a fight, you got to remember that $33 million a fight for Canelo, the heavyweights of the 1980s the heavyweights of the late 1980s were making that. This $33 million a fight is not something that is unheard of in boxing. This is something that the top fighters were making 20 years ago. But because of the decline in the heavyweight division, and I think it has a lot to do with the division of all these daggone belts, it just hasn't been the case. There hasn't been a heavyweight that's really been able to electrify the American boxing public where all that money can be made. So anyway, it is what it is, and with that, I'm out. Peace.